Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Spirit Society of Virginia. We'll start tonight's study with a message from the book Living Spring, psychographed by Emmanuel through the mediumship of Chico Xavier. Message number 175, entitled Change. But they did not welcome him because he was on his way to Jerusalem. Luke chapter 9, verse 53. This verse from Luke is worthy of comment. When the Samaritans saw that Jesus and the disciples were going to Jerusalem, they refused to welcome them. The Samaritans identified them by their look. If they had been travelers on their way to somewhere else, perhaps they would have offered them accommodation, comfort, joy. Does the same thing not apply even today with the true followers of the Master? For us, Jerusalem in this verse symbolizes bearing witness to the faith. And all it takes is for someone to walk resolutely on this path for ordinary people, directionless and argumentative, to shut the doors of their hearts to him or her. Those who are careless, who are bent on easy pleasures, are immediately welcomed by the new Samaritans of the world. On the earth, restless women and well-dressed, deceitful, and spiritually sick men have a large number of friends for the time being. However, when followers of Jesus wake up on the human pathway, realizing they have to bear witness to their trust in God by denying their old ways, then in most cases they must proceed all alone. This is because on such occasions they show themselves to have been changed. They do not display the normal impression of persons seeking self-satisfaction. They are individuals who have resolved to renounce their defects and to eliminate them at the cost of enormous effort in order to espouse the redemptive cross that will identify them as belonging to the Divine Master. For this reason, they will not be fully acknowledged, even in their own homes, because they have undergone a profound metamorphosis. They now show signs of those who have taken the pathway of definitive inner renewal towards God, willing to devote themselves to the eternal good and to uplift their heart on the great pathway. Thank you.
Let us pray. We feel your presence, Divine Master, in the presence of the loving doctors, nurses, and therapists, who kindly come to lead us into new beginnings, into new understanding, balance, harmony, health. Health for the mind, for the bodies, bringing this calmness that allows the fortress of our virtues to be solidified. We visualize the good and loving messengers of yours, reading the names of everyone in the book of prayer, and bringing each one the remedies, the solutions that they need, inspiring everyone to regeneration. As for us, we bow our heads in gratitude to the presence of the spirit teachers here present, who kindly have prepared this session for us. May we be good students in their hands. May we be easy instruments of joy and therapy for one another. We ask for your guidance as we are grateful to your protection and the permission to begin tonight's therapeutic works. And so be it.
So be it.
All right. Playground. You're working. Yes, thank you. See, Daisy was pointing out, we started this in August. How many months? 9 months.
A child is born.
Life insane.
At least we should be reborn. Eh?
Right?
Yeah, we're being reborn.
Yeah. And today is almost the last chapter, second to last, chapter 25, about sex and religion. He almost finishes the book with this chapter. He didn't because in the last chapter, he does something that is almost impossible for us on earth. He summarizes the book in 3 paragraphs. Only a superior spirit can do this. Because when you break down, it's like you get the whole book in 3 paragraphs. And this is one thing that we get to know of the spirits. The more we evolve, the more objective we are. But effectively objective. We can be objective, but not necessarily can be like quite puzzling for people. But in this case, we'll see next week. We're going to dig in and find the whole book in 3 paragraphs. That's why on Monday, at the mediumistic meeting, the good spirits were saying, practice writing the good. Think about it. How often do we write to do the good? How often? All the time? Every time? Every text message? Every email? Everything? You see, we cannot do something we don't practice. So that's the task of the Spiritist Center, which is unique on earth, because not even in schools they are learning that. I've never heard say, let's write to do the good. Say, write about this, write about that, but there's no moral concept, right? It's not intentional. With Spiritism, it becomes intentional. So, why is he finishing this book, Life and Sex with Religion? It's the first time on earth somebody writes about sex and religion. And it's not anything outrageous. Right? We don't want to search. Just seeking the pictures for this chapter, I found many things that exist on the internet. Exactly. But not of this nature. What do some churches, some religious thoughts think about sex? It's sinful. It's dirty. It's bad. It should be avoided at all costs. It's a temptation.
Just to have kids.
It's just to have kids. Right? Well, let's see. Emmanuel, look where he begins. He is going to quote the Spirit's book by Kardec in Question and Answer 166. So, it has 2 parts. The first one is when Kardec asked, how can the soul that has not attained to perfection during corporeal life complete the work of its purification? What will be the answer? By undergoing the trial of a new existence. But now they use the word trial. This word is very important for this chapter. Trial. And we're going to see how Kardec and Emmanuel are super aligned. Like any science, there's continuity. So interconnected. Okay? Interesting enough, Chico Xavier wrote all his more than 400, almost 500 books, and wrote many, psychographed them, but he never invented something else. It's Spiritism. It's always Spiritism. He did not reinvent the wheel, he continued the work. So the spirits that come through Chico Xavier certainly belong to the same team of Kardec's codification. But Kardec wasn't satisfied. He then asked, how does the soul accomplish this new existence? Is it through its transformation as a spirit? And the answer, the soul, in purifying itself, undoubtedly undergoes a transformation. But in order to effect this transformation, they repeat, it needs the trial of a corporeal life. These spirits are very, very intelligent. Remember, teenage girls received these wise answers. Why am I saying this? It seems like I am putting them down. No, I'm just valuing them and saying, how often we look at teenagers and think, even children come to me and say, I'm afraid when I'm going to become a teen. Why? Because parents talk a lot about it in a negative way. And the other day, it's interesting enough, because we had a group of children, Virginia was in the middle, and all the kids were saying that. They're like, oh, I'm not looking forward to being a teen. I said, why not? It's going to be a great time. And before I said that, Virginia said, I am. Because I keep telling her, it's going to be a great time for you. It's going to be a great time. You're going to have more freedom. You're going to explore more. You're going to understand more of yourself. I mean, it's great. But the forces of darkness on earth are so skillful that they have created at the most important time on earth, when we are about to transition, when more than ever children become more mature earlier. We don't have time to waste. The clock is ticking on earth. Right now, at this generation, they are being raised thinking that teenage years are doomed. And those are the years when you can set yourself in the right track. Usually, you are on the right track from that moment on, rarely later. If you set yourself off, it's going to take at least 20 years for you to possibly get back on. So it's now. Those who have a task to fulfill, they won't begin when they're 50. This generation needs to start now. So we, spiritists, cannot tell them that it's bad. Say, rejoice. Chico Xavier began everything at 17. Divaldo Franco did too. All the greatest minds, they began when they were quite young. Why are we going to wait for them to be 40, 50? We cannot afford. So this new life is for progress. But it's going to be a trial. What is a trial? Okay, so let's talk about what does trial mean. What is a trial? It involves difficulty,
A challenge.
a challenge, effort. So let's get this word, challenge. The challenge of a new life. You have to make effort because it's difficult. Because you're going to face your very old being, but you have to have a new response. Have to be innovative, creative. How are we going to respond differently to the same old if we're not creative? So creativity is a must. And that's why Emmanuel is going to start this chapter with a question. Is it possible to exempt someone from sexual impulses and concerns simply for having made commitments of religious nature? Somebody who says, oh, I'm committed to the church. Of course, he's talking about the Catholic Church. Or other religions in which you have to make a vow in such a way that you do not get married, you don't have any sexual life whatsoever. But is it possible? Like, just because the person said, I'm committed to this religious faith, then I don't feel any willingness, any desire, any sexual desire?
It wasn't a lot more religious people.
Right.
Yes. You see? That's probably why we don't have them. Because it proves by itself that it's not possible. So you see how Emmanuel is, he brings our reasoning together. He doesn't come and say, no, it's very strategic the way he says, very educational. He says, is it possible to erase the sexual desire just because you vowed to be religiously connected to a commitment? Of course, the logic responds in the spirit of sequence of nature. The individuals that embrace tasks of such order are seeking or accepting for themselves regenerating or educational spurs, since ordinances and provisions of an external nature do not miraculously transfigure the inner world. So if I say, how many people do I know who came and said, oh, I had a bad relationship, and then I did a silent retreat. And then I found somebody else in the silent retreat. Right? Or, yeah, so it's Emmanuel proving to us. You can't run away from yourself. It's inside, right? But when we make the commitment, we're seeking, consciously or unconsciously, to educate ourselves. The accomplishments of faith, for this very reason, are materialized on the basis of fierce struggles of the soul within itself. In the United States, we love to hate the Catholic Church. But we Spiritists, we appreciate the Catholic Church because it has had a phenomenal role in the world. That doesn't mean any of us approve of the sexual crimes that happen on the behind the scenes. But we can't forget that it's not a thing that was organized by the church itself. The individuals are choosing so. But why? There's a fallacy in the church itself. To believe that somebody is going to not desire anything just by making a vow. Then click Love is Blind. Netflix. This weekend. There'll be a live.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody has to watch. And today. It's today. I know, Carol. I know who said yes and no already, but I know you fast forward. You fast forward. I won't say anything. Virginia and I quickly glanced at the yes and no things. But you see, they say yes, and only God knows what happens next. The same that happens in a marriage, it happens in this vow that people give, and later they change their minds because circumstances change. So they will only be able to be absent of this if they work on it consciously. And this is the beauty of this chapter. For many people in this world are saying that they are not religious because of these sexual crimes in our churches. If we just had this new understanding, we could change it all, and people would change the fact that, like in other churches, you can get married, you can have a family, and yet you still need to work on yourself. So Spiritism is revolutionary when it writes this chapter through Emmanuel and Chico Xavier. Because here we come to a deep understanding why these things happen and why we're having these many problems in the church. Were it not for those, you see, the forces of darkness, they have a way in. If we go to the book 50 years later by Emmanuel, he's going to show to us clearly how the mistakes happened since day one of the church. If you remember Celia, when she had to enter the convent, like the seminary, and how they were structured, it was, who was playing the rules? Jesus? No, Jesus never created anything. He never even created a spiritual center, himself. He didn't create a church. He didn't create a seminary. We created it. And as we can see in the book 50 years later, we created it for reasons that were quite personal. Yes, we believed in the Christ, but we had to run away from the persecutions and at the same time live well. And then we would get together, and then there would be a leader, and the leader would set the tone. And we had to abide in order to survive. And from one institution to the next, we built what is today. We need the courage to change. Who is going to change it? The new generation, if supported by us. But for them to do it, we needed to share this with them. So they will have awareness. And they will be supported in their task. Emmanuel then continues. Nobody improves oneself from one day to the next. Just this sentence, we could stop forever. Because in this sentence, Emmanuel is saying, take it easy. Don't struggle yourself looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, I'm not patient yet. you will grow into it. How to alienate conditions inherent in the very life of the spirit, cherished during the ages, only considering verbal affirmations. So how can we change ourselves from within? Something we have conditioned ourselves for many lives just because I said, from now on, I'm never going to do sex again. I mean, it's very naive to believe that this is going to happen. Right? Very naive. Knowing our nature. The laws of the universe do not destroy instinct, but transform instinct into reason and angelhood in the passage of centuries through the mechanisms of sublimation. So what is sublimation? If the key is to sublimate, what is to sublimate? Let's talk about not only sex, but for anything in life. When we talk about anger, sublimate is to transform. So if I am angry, I'm not going to stop being an angry person, having anger issues, just by saying, I'm never going to be angry again. I need strategies of sublimation. And there are therapeutic strategies to help us, including our problems regarding sexual misconduct, sexual addictions. It's not impossible for someone who is sexually addict to change, or it wouldn't be a child of God. We're all children of God. We will, but it's going to take a lot of effort. First, the golden rule. Think, what would you like to receive? If I am at work and I see a very friendly co-worker and we start feeling attracted to one another and we're both married, the sublimation there comes through the mechanism of the golden rule. Would I like my spouse to be cherishing this flirtation here? Because some people say, I know they do it, so I do it too. You don't know anything because you haven't seen it. But they justify their misbehavior. In our case, we can't justify anymore because at the end of the day, it's going to be our life. So we sublimate our anger in the same manner. Why am I going to be indignated? We had a commitment, somebody missed the appointment. We have a choice, being angry, losing our health, or saying, you know what, I am doing my share. If they are not, I'm sorry for them. Maybe they're not well, because if they were well, they would be here. And then I sublimate that impulse of being angry, indignated. Also because if God, every time we made a mistake, He threw a ray of thunder over us, the earth wouldn't exist. So humble ourselves, right? Who are we? Who are we? Very interesting. How to demand the extinction of genetic stimuli in someone just because the someone is dedicated to the service of divine faith, when these same stimuli are ingredients of life and evolution created by the same divine providence for the support and elevation of all beings. So He's making us think, Can we say sex is sinful? No. God created it. One. Two, this impulse is imprinted in our genes. Because everything we are is going to imprint in our physical machinery for the purposes of our evolution. So we need to learn to deal with it, to handle it, learn to handle it. Now, since we have the Declaration of Independence, he uses the same term that we have in the, of course, so in different aspects, right? We're talking about rights. And here we cannot alienate things that are in us. He says, having understood the inalienability of sexual problems in the individualities representative of religious ideas in the world, it's more than reasonable to consider that these individuals, in the great majority, requested for themselves the controls of a moral nature, to which they are transiently linked, to extract the maximum benefit from them in their own favor. So think about this. We cannot say, okay, now you're going to wear this clothes, and then from now on you won't feel anything. And then the priest looks at the beautiful woman, turned on. Nothing to do with the clothes. Nothing to do with his verbal vows. Nothing to do. That's why people don't understand these sexual crimes of the church. We understand without vouching for it. On the contrary, a crime is a crime. A priest who sexually assaults a child, an adult, whatever their age, especially a child, is heinous crime. Why do they do it? Because of this. Because they came with those problems inside of them. So they should screen these people psychologically, to say the least. And this is our take, not the Spiritist take. We're just thinking, if you want to keep this thing about not allowing people to get married, then screen them for sexual issues. That's going to avoid many problems, maybe. Because if you have some issues, you're not going to get in. I know we're thinking of many things that happen on the behind the scenes, right? And that's why Divaldo Franco has this book, Sex and Obsession, that talks about the forces of darkness using the church to demoralize the Christ. So we Spiritists, we do not rejoice with it. Because at the end of the day, it's our problem too. So we need to pray that these things change in our society if we want a world of regeneration. How can somebody who has those issues, sexual issues, reincarnate and not present those issues just because they made a vow and are using a specific outfit? It doesn't make any sense. Effectively, now it's going to talk about a class that works well. Superior spirits who have already raised themselves to notable realms of elevation solely for love and sacrifice, take a seat in Earth's religious organizations, returning to reincarnation in activities of existence. Like, for example, Thich Nhat Hanh, the Dalai Lama, Chico Xavier, Vivaldi, many others that are spread out. Mother Teresa. There are so many around the globe. People who you can see they're very elevated, like Celia in the book 50 years ago. 50 years ago. And you remember when the girl claimed that Celia,
Yeah.
you know, that her son or daughter was Celia's son or daughter? She wasn't even a man. And this showed the level of the spirit. Didn't even defend itself. In such opportunities, they propel the progress of their brothers and sisters. These missionaries of devotion vibrate in ranges of sublime love, almost always inaccessible to the understanding of their contemporaries. So usually, we're going to see these people and not even notice until they are dead, like Celia's case. Now humanity is getting to know of the so-called Santa Marina in Egypt. Our Celia is Santa Marina of Egypt. She's there. The tomb is there. Yeah. And now we know that this person here is that one and the story behind it. But then people didn't recognize. So Emmanuel is going to talk now about the ones who are not very involved. Analogous circumstances do not occur among those who are reborn under a disciplinary regime requested by them. So some people will ask, who remembers in the book 50 years later? That book is a portrait of all the school chapter. The men, actually the book Renunciation. This one I'm taking from Renunciation now. Renunciation. I was talking about Cyril. But let's keep it and go straight to the church again. Right? Straight to the church. So Carlos and Alcione. Carlos clearly is in this case of these people who were reborn and they asked to discipline themselves. A great number of these workers of religious ideas are reincarnated under conditions of trial, showcasing multiple difficulties and inhibition in the body and the mind. So he was like, I am in the church. I don't want to be in the church. And then I'm in the church again. And now I'm married to somebody. And then I go back to the church again. You see a conflicted person. Back and forth, back and forth. It's an inner conflict. Showing to us that this person asked to be in that discipline for their own sake, but they couldn't deal with it. They were so tormented, they went back and forth. Some suffer an exaggerated tendency toward sexual turmoil, a tendency which habitually keeps them withdrawn with fear of any affective expansion. So here we open a parenthesis for people who are following their studies and they are making decisions to be in relationships. If we have this inner turmoil that is immense to the point that we become so repressed and avoid relationships, you better avoid them to deal with it, or you're going to make many people unhappy. Because to enter a marriage in this turmoil, it's going to be more complicated. Here they are talking about the church, but we're talking about commitments overall. Go to the therapist's office, good ones that are specialized in it, or come to the Spiritist Center so you can work on this and heal from within. Because this fear, says Emmanuel, they fear to manifest love. Why? Because everything's sex for them. If they give a hug, it's sexual. Everything. It sounds like something we know in this nation, right? Can't hug a kid. Right? Our children are young. If they hug, how many of us heard from the teachers? Your child is a hugger. They shouldn't hug,
All the time, all day long.
right?
All the time, all day long. Which I love. Yeah, all day long.
Right?
But I make sure that there's also other people around it. And it's so true. Like today, we had class picture. One girl had another skirt under her dress to prevent see-throughs. And it was all wrapped inside. And my instinctive nature was to pull
Yeah.
inside her skirt. But I was like, thank goodness we're in the hole. And everybody see what I'm doing. Because they could see that I was just pulling. And I told her, like, you have shorts under, so you're going to have to pull it more often because it looks all bad. But it's that kind of thing.
Yes.
You have to have another adult or another child constantly.
Constantly around and people. Why do we have this fear? Look, I'm going to go back to what you said. This exaggerated tendency towards sexual turmoil. And because it's there, we fear the manifestation of love, and we even condemn others for it. Too much hug, too much kissing, too much this, too much that.
When my kid was in daycare, once they are potty trained, the 3-year-olds, they have an accident, they have to clean themselves. They come home all dirty. The teachers are not allowed because there's no camera in there.
Oh my gosh, that's a disaster.
So she stayed in daycare for, I don't know, not even 6 months. We're like,
It's impossible.
and never mind the hugging and the kissing. There are 2-3-year-olds who don't see their parents all day. Can't hug them.
Can't hug.
If they come hug you, you can't, because I work there.
Yeah. Oh god.
If they come hug you have to be like, okay.
That's why they learned the shoulder hug.
Yeah, or like this, the tap from
Yeah.
the open tap. And these are kids that understand people have to work, understand daycares exist for a reason. But your kid is there all day.
Yes.
Let them have some affection. Can't.
We understand the protection, but it's exaggerated.
But now that you're saying this, it's like we fear so much of it.
Yeah. And we should be careful.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, I've seen in the profession
Yeah.
the double side. While I hug my kids with all the love I can possibly give, I know that not everybody is gonna do the same. I remember when I was the year I was hired, the stories of the fires and whatnot. So we do have to be careful, and we do have to protect ourselves too, as the educators, because children lie to satisfy their parents, and they come against us. So it is like, it's really, that's what I'm saying, like, we always make sure we have an adult around, so that at least the other adult can tell. And then I don't remember what happened in the hall that I was helping someone, and say, oh, there are cameras, so I'm safeguarded. But that's how it goes. Like, the child comes and hugs me, I make sure that I push the child in the hall with me, hugging, but then the camera is there. I can never be alone with a child and hugging, because I know they lie, and not because they want to, it's because it's seeking affection of their parents. They're gonna tell against us because they're gonna please their parents first, and then we become the ones without license, and then the whole picture. It is sad.
Wow. Let's see. And they are talking about people who are devoted to religious commitments, like in the churches where you vow. He doesn't say the words, but we're We understand what he's saying. How often less fortunate incidents emerge in which we see ardent and passionate speakers of this or that religious idea falling into much more complicated and deplorable emotional experiences than that of those which they themselves disapproved of in the journey and in the lives of their companions. Even in some other churches, we've seen this, and that's a problem. It's a serious problem. Why does this happen? The phenomenon is fair in the sense of it's understood because in accepting the badges of certain religious field, the spirit imposes on themselves the self-policing factor with the absence of moral filters. What are moral filters? Our actual constructions, our very experiences in the good. So when we tell our children or our teens, don't do it, don't do it, it's more important to make them create memories in this life of good things that they are doing. So when challenges happen, they already have a record of good actions that transform their feelings, filtering the tendencies of the past. It's not enough to teach them. It's important to let them gain moral filters. It's not enough just to say. It's important to encourage virtue building in them. That's why that phenomenal book, The Family Virtues Guide, it's phenomenal to help our children voluntarily gravitate towards building virtues like Benjamin Franklin did. To make sure that the tendencies of the past are going to be filtered. Or when the challenges come, they just repeat. Same for us. For us. Then Emmanuel says, external religious instructions do not suddenly alter the impulses of the heart. That's what we're saying. Although they are built in a fortress of light, assisting the individual that welcomes them for the service of self-improvement. So we make the commitment and how we're going to see it. The people who come, for example, in spiritist centers. We have dress code. Why? For many reasons, but mainly because when it comes summer, depending on countries, it's hard. I've talked to friends who are pass givers. They're giving passes and the woman is almost like semi-naked. You think the pass giver is a saint? Think about it. It's very tricky. And then you're there and like, oh my gosh, please God, I don't want to see anything. I don't want to see anything. You see? Even in spiritist centers, we say, I want to help. But do you see the people who come in spiritist centers are spirits? Because if you look at them, men, women, young, old, you see the words. We're all spirits living on earth. But then when we see the shell, shiny and beautiful, we want to touch. can't blame the church. I remember a friend at the Spirit started about him. He's so funny. But he was so sincere when he asked this question. Vanessa, why didn't Jesus look as strong as Arnold Schwarzenegger?
This is my muchacha.
Seriously. He asked so many interesting questions. It's always about Jesus' body.
What is Jesus? Why did he want Jesus to be worked up?
Because some people are like this. They believe that you need to show the strength and this. Because we talk about the spirit living on earth, but actually we're concerned about the matter, which is passing. Think about it. I don't want to be negative, but it's life. One day, this physical body will go back to the soil. Think about it. It won't be here anymore. And you think this is all there is. And there are people who commit crimes because of the body. John, you want to ask a question?
No, I was, today before I came out and exercised, and the thought that was given to me was Jesus in CrossFit in Palestine.
Literally the first
And I was like,
Yeah,
and, you know, here you are talking about it.
exactly. We're talking about it. But we need to ask ourselves. We're talking about the churches, but remember, can't point fingers. Yes.
What about those religions? They, the man can marry like
They can-
5 women. Like, Mormons,
The Mormons.
Saudi Arabia, yeah.
That we know. It's something else. I mean, we're not talking about the religious people, but the religions that allow it. We know monogamy is progress, right? Everything contrary to it, it's still primitive.
What was your answer to the question regarding Jesus'
But
body?
I remember Mentor Joseph saying, are you going to respect? Would you respect him? Because he looks like that? Probably not. Chico Xavier himself had to come in a very particular way. And yet, we made it hard for him. Because if he were super handsome, rich, famous, many titles, it would be impossible for him to do his mission. Remember Paul of Tarsus? The fiancé of a man who came in the middle of the crowd and was like, I'm in love with you. It's hard. And this happens. People project. But the hardest thing is for the person who is doing this work of religious commitment to sublimate, to do this service of self-improvement and not see the people as men or women, but as eternal spirits, immortal spirits. So we spiritists need to think about this. Every time we step into a spiritist center, it's an opportunity for us to practice this. It's not a man or a woman or a child, it's spirits. If we practice that with babies, with elderly people, men, women, across the ages, it's going to sublimate in us any impulses of the heart. The less materialized we are. the more importance we give to matter, the worse it is. Am I not going to take care of my physical body? Yes, I will. But will I take care of it thinking that it's everlasting? That's foolish. Foolish, foolish, foolish. Believe it or not, there are people who believe that. There are people who don't think about death. There are people who believe they are going to stay and stay and stay and stay. Don't ask me why, but that's how they feel. It's materialism. And Spiritism came to destroy materialism. The words of the superior spirits in us. So if I look at a physical body, a good technique that I've heard somebody saying, I think it's quite unique. When you look at somebody who's quite attractive, think 50 years. Think of it in 50 years. Okay? And then you're going to think, oh, well, why am I struggling here?
That's what I say. Don't get there. Look at your body law. Think about your body law. If your body law look good, go ahead there.
Paula.
Not him, a friend.
No, yeah.
Friend.
You're good, Paula. You're good. You're good. You're good. I've heard of that one too.
Every time you put the finger with somebody else, you got 3 bags to
Three bags.
You know?
Exactly. Look at your mother. Oh my God. Just so we are equalized here, Emmanuel says, we are, and he says, we, indebted spirits before the laws of the universe that are entwined with one another, incarnate and discarnate, gradually perfecting our own qualities and learning at the cost of work and time to achieve sublimation in a laborious march towards the conquest of the eternal values. Remember, Emmanuel, he also had his experiences as priest in the church. He's Father Damiano in the book Renunciation. And then he kept on it for quite a while. Yeah.
There was also a priest in Brazil, the one who
Yes.
was from São Paulo.
Padre Manuel da Nóbrega, who founded the city of São Paulo, inspired by Paul of Tarsus, literally. And we know that's why it's called São Paulo. And we know Emmanuel as he was always guided by Paul of Tarsus. Well, look what he says. We are indebted spirits. Hopefully, we want to consciously progress and sublimate ourselves at the cost of work and time. Think about it. Work and time takes effort, repetition. See how Emmanuel, Andrea Lewis, Kardec, they are all perfectly aligned. We go to the book Evolution in Two Words. In 2 words, it's precisely this. Andrea Lewis and here Emmanuel. They're speaking the same language, same science, the science of the spirit, gradually perfecting. So why do we get upset with ourselves, impatient with ourselves and others, if this is the way it is? You know that image of the book, No Roteiro de Jesus, when Peter was so impatient with Jesus, because Jesus was patient, he was understanding, compassionate to the woman who was to be stoned. And throughout the course of that conversation with Peter, later, when he watched Peter talking to a woman and finding out what he found out, throughout, Jesus was patient, supportive, compassionate. Because he knows it's a gradual step. That does not justify our crimes, but it makes us understand that it takes time. And that's why we need the gospel. I think this message here, sublimation is everything. We need to work on this actively. Let me sublimate this part of me. My tendencies of the past that are very still materialistic, whether sexual or not, and sublimate it, change it, transform it. It's transformation. So you displace a bad thing by bringing a good one. That's why studying, doing the good will help us gain muscle. Studying and doing the good. Always. And that's the line of work that Jesus brings to us. Never give up. Begin anew always. Sublimation. Big word for us to study more at home. Go deeper. When we come back next week, we'll work more deeply into this as we wrap up the book. Anybody else has anything to say? Imagine the day people know of this. Huh? We're not going to say, I'm not religious because look what the priests do. Oh, really? All the priests, we should have statistics.
A lot of people use that as an excuse to leave the church.
Exactly. But how many of them? How many? And we're not trying to justify anything. Never. Because a crime is a crime. But we're saying, come on. I've heard the other day somebody who said, I used to be at this evangelical church and I left it because the pastor made a big mistake. Wow. Then you leave, you have no religion, your family has no religion. So then the pastor and you together were doing wrong. Because when you're religious, no matter who is in front of us, it's between God and us, as Mother Teresa says. Mother Teresa has this beautiful prayer. At the end of the day, it's between God and us, nobody else. Right?
It's also a relationship of I don't want to take ownership of myself because I don't go to religion because you didn't do. But if you do, I'm never going to be like you, so I can't do either.
Yes, exactly.
So
Yes.
if we don't hold ourselves accountable, who will?
Mhm.
Because in the end of the day, you had the master. But I'll never be like Jesus, and you also never work for that. So then I don't go to church because you did this. But if you did exactly 100% correct, I'll never be able to do that. That's too much for me. So we are looking for excuses not to.
Always. Always. Right? Always.
Yeah, like kids.
Like kids.
Not only from a religious standpoint, but from a physical standpoint.
It doesn't matter what restriction. Oh, you don't need chocolate. Oh my gosh, I'd love to be like you. So why don't you try?
Mhm.
Right? Oh, you go to the gym and you exercise, so I'd love to. No, but it's not for me. So what is the difference between me and you other than the willpower to achieve anything? Anything.
Exactly.
I feel that sublimation is the word, because we are still related to the models that are here instead to the only thing, which is God, right? Jesus being our only guided model ever. But then we go anywhere we go, we want to have these gurus, and we follow them, and we'll be disappointed, and we disappoint in that. But in reality, we are following the wrong leader, which should be Jesus.
Of all the things I know, I'm sure that Jesus worked out idea. The only thing is, we should have, it's somewhere the idea of spirit, mortality, reincarnation should never have been hidden.
Of course.
Because that is the key point.
Yeah.
And it is so well that we can't see the perspective that this is all a mirage. So of everything that was left behind and built after what Jesus left for us is the immortality of the soul. If that was at the core, a lot of the things we go through as the
Will
world,
change.
right? Because then we wouldn't think of suicide. You wouldn't think of these things like, oh, right? If you think of only from the materialistic standpoint, it doesn't make sense to yourself, because then you end your problems. But because you don't understand that you are multiple attempts to progress, you feel that the shortcut is possible.
Yes.
So that's the only thing I look at history and I wonder, why did we hide this? At what point did we hide this? I mean, I can understand the why, but how did we get it hidden? Why didn't we have someone that, bring, because then it took Kardec to bring and unravel the whole thing again. Right?
Yes. True. All right. So let us now, you came at the right time. We're going to say a prayer now. Yes, perfect timing. Perfect timing. Let us now do the passes with Jesus and the prayer, right? We're going to ask Daisy and Paloma to do the final prayer. The passes. We invite everyone to close their eyes. And let us feel how grateful we are to be here together in this very moment. And let us open ourselves to receive the treatment, knowing that Jesus is always with us. He performs miracles, and all he needs is an open heart. So we then visualize ourselves being transported to a beautiful lavender garden. Let us visualize this garden as we know it exists in the spiritual realm, connected to the Spirit Society of Virginia. We visualize ourselves walking amongst the flowers, hearing the birds singing, the light breeze in our face. And we forget about the challenges of each of our lives. We are there wholeheartedly and open.
But we realize that we're not alone. There is this kind figure walking alongside ourselves. We feel secure in his presence. And we feel that he already knows everything that we have to share. Because he is our master. It is our guide and model, who is there by our side. He has always been there. We just haven't acknowledged it. And he invites us to pick up some of the lavender flowers, helping us with each steam. And as we pick up this beautiful bouquet, Master Jesus asks us to bring it close to our heart chakra. We visualize that the perfume of lavender envelops each and every one of us. And as we breathe in and out, it penetrates our perispirit, cleansing our whole physical and spiritual bodies. We visualize that the color of lavender envelops us in healing light, rebalancing our chakras. And Master Jesus is there by our side as we receive this healing medicine together with him. And he also visualizes and he asks that we share also this bouquet of flowers with someone in our lives that, present or past, we need to reconcile. We need to readdress potential mistakes of emotional and sexual imbalances. And Master Jesus goes with us to deliver this bouquet so that whenever they are incarnate or in the spiritual plane, this person can also receive the healing medicine. And together with Master Jesus, we feel secure and strong. Let us continue visualizing this beautiful garden of lavender throughout this week as a healing medicine for our souls, as we now prepare ourselves for our final prayer.
Beloved Master Jesus, doctors and nurses that came to treat us, and the spirit mentors of Spirit Society of Virginia, Kardec Radio. We want to express our gratitude for the studies that have been happening for the last 9 months on this book. We have so much to reflect, to look within ourselves, and to improve. But under God's mercy, we feel empowered in our ability to change. We understand that progress is a step by step. We are grateful for Emmanuel and Chico in their ways of writing and expressing our challenges at the same time of supporting our journey. And lastly, feeling this joy in our hearts, we want to emanate positive vibrations to our loved ones, to other members of the center that couldn't be here today, to everyone that has their names on the book of prayer, enveloping each one in these healing energies and feeling this close to our beloved Master Jesus. And with your permission and under your protection always, we ask to close the meeting of today. And so be it.